Tekken series was always a thing of interest to me. As a child, I spent countless hours on fighting games such as Mortal Kombat, Tekken, Street Fighter, and King of Fighters, but still, none of them had the Tekken's golden formula. Not to say that those games are inferior, I'm a die-hard Mortal Kombat fan, but still, there was always something. Something that made me want to play it even though the game had nothing more to give. Maybe the graphics, or the combat choreography, or maybe a Heihachi's hair. I started playing Tekken when I was 7, and my first game in the series was Tekken 3, regarded as one of the best fighting games ever. Even after 26 years, the game is still a banger. I never had the chance to play the earlier Tekken games, and as a fighting game enthusiast, I deemed it my duty to play all the games in the series. It was a mixed experience for me, but nevertheless a rewarding experience. With all of its upside downs, here it is my experience with Tekken 1. Usually in a fighting game, the story is not that important and people often concentrate on gameplay, but still having a good story counts as a positive aspect and a backbone to a fighting game. Well, Tekken 1 doesn't have a good story. As a matter of fact, Tekken didn't have a good story up until Tekken 3 or 4. The whole story of Tekken 1 can be said in few simple sentences. 21 years prior to the events in game, Heihachimishima, head of Mishima Zaibatsu, a large corporation in almost everything, decides to test his son Kazuya to see if he's capable of leading the Mishima Zaibatsu and inheriting the family fortune. He then casually tosses a 5-year-old child into a mountain. Kazuya survives, but is left with a big scar on his chest, which awakens the devil Jin deep inside of him. He then climbs out of the mountain with a burning thirst for revenge, and decides to one day face his father, Heihachi. He travels around the world and faces fighters all around the world. He goes undefeated except for the draw with the American polnareff, Paul. His father, Heihachi, takes notice of this, and decides to announce a martial art tournament named the Iron Fist. Kazuya and Heihachi face each other at finals, and in a battle of strength, Kazuya surpasses his father, and in a feat of revenge throws the unconscious body of his father into the same mountain he was thrown at. With a grimace smile on his face, he becomes the head of Mishima Zaibatsu. In terms of gameplay, Tekken 1 was a huge thing back in its original release date. You could control 4 limbs of the characters, and with its 3D character design, the game was praised by many. And the game was extremely similar to Virtua Fighter. But looking back at it now, the game has aged badly. The content for most of the characters is minimal and you can only find the important techniques. The game is very clunky and slow compared to the other Tekken games, mostly because of its time, and it was the first entry in the series. The difficulty setting exists and makes a huge difference in the game, all except Heihachi. His AI is almost the same throughout all the difficulty settings. The graphics ain't that bad, but considering other fighting games at the time, Tekken stood high in its place. As a matter of fact, it wouldn't have been clunky for me if I played it 20 years ago. And in terms of combo, if you can do 10 hit combos then you are good to go, but if not, well, good luck. Originally, there were 8 playable characters in the arcade version of the game, with 6 sub-bosses contributed to each character. Then, in the home console version of the game, the sub-bosses and final boss were unlockable, each with their own different moveset, but all of them lacked final ending cutscene. Nevertheless, these were the characters, Jack 1. In terms of a story, Jack 1 is a robot created by Mishima Zaibatsu to counter Kazuyamishima's rise. They failed, but if they succeeded, they would have been mass-produced and the data used for future Jack projects. In terms of gameplay, Jack feels like a big muscular man who can barely move. And this makes him a unique type of character because he was really hard to play with and his moveset is pretty limited. But if you want to look menacing, this is your good to go character, Kazuya. But in terms of the story, I already talked about Kazuya, and its ending is the canon one. In terms of gameplay, Kazuya is strong. In fact, it was so strong in Tekken games that developers thought they should reduce the damage of some of his attacks. Agile, high damage, and good to use moveset makes Kazuya one, if not the best character in Tekken 1, King. Well, the King in this Tekken is known to OG Tekken fans as King 1, and it differs from the King we see in new games. The king was actually a ruthless street brawler with no regards towards human life. After one of his fights, he is fatally wounded and is collapsed in front of a monastery. A priest saved him. He saw the error of his ways and converted to the way of God. He became a Catholic priest and decided to build an orphanage so no child would enter the path he went through. But he lacks money. Therefore, he enters Iron Fist Tournament 1 to get money for his task. He donned the jaguar mask similar to pro wrestlers to conceal his identity. In the ending cutscene, we can see King celebrating his victory in a weird video with his orphaned children. In terms of gameplay, King is really defensive. He's really well rounded and moves better than Jack, but still lacks his special throws which he gained in Tekken 2. His frame of moves are really huge and you must play really close if you want to do any damage. Once a move goes wrong and you can pray to God for recovery. This doesn't change the fact that he is still one of my best characters in the game, as his iconic mask makes every player to remember the good old days. Martial law. Martial law is a martial artist who entered the tournament for financial purposes, and his goal is to open his own dojo, which he managed to do by the end of the Tekken 1. In terms of gameplay, it's Bruce Lee. His technique, his style, his physique resembles Bruce Lee way too much. He is fast, but his damage output is not that much. Low attacks are really good for Law, but still suffers from the problem of being clanky. If you are someone who goes for nothing but speed in a fight, Law is for you. Michelle Chang. Of Native American Chinese heritage, Michelle's father was ordered by Heihachimishima to find a specific pendant. This pendant was held by Michelle. After failing his mission, Heihachi orders his men to kill him. Michelle, unbeknownst to this, grows up and then hears the truth from her mother. Burning with a thirst for revenge, she decides to enter the tournament and avenge her father. In her ending, we see her run to his mother after winning the competition to embrace her. In terms of gameplay, Michelle is one of the hardest in game. She has a lot of counterattacks and a lot of dodges, which if you are able to master, turns you into a really deadly fighter. She lacks flashy moves, so to speak, and her gameplay seems bland for everyone, but after learning her, she becomes really dangerous. Nina Williams. Descending from an Irish family, Nina is an assassin hired during the first tournament to kill Heihachi, which she fails, following her defeat at the hands of Kazuya. She has a childish rivalry with her sister Anna, which you can see at her ending cutscene. In terms of gameplay, Nina is very defensive and utilizes all her four limbs to put her enemies under pressure. She was originally designed to be favorable over most of the players, and they kind of succeeded in doing it. She kinda lacks the throws that made her deadly in Tekken 2. In the tournament, he enters to show the world that he is toughest in the world and also for financial purposes, as are the half of the characters in this game. He does well and is only barely defeated by Kazuya. In his ending, we can see him showing his fighting prowess in his first and only series video. In terms of gameplay level, Paul is... He does lots of damage, easy to go around, and agile. Paul is everything you could hope for in a fighting game character, but he is open to counters, and if you don't time your moves correctly, you can get punished badly. He was my favorite character playing Tekken 1, and he still remains one of my favorites besides King, Yoshimitsu. Yoshimitsu is the leader of Manji clan, which, long story short, steals from the rich to help the poor. He is always shrouded in mystery, and the character has come a long way considering this. In his ending, we can see him make Law extremely happy and give the poor what is needed: money. In terms of gameplay, Yoshimitsu is a guy who puts sword to a fistfight. Unfair, but fun. His moves are really hard to master, and this character shows a lot of promise if you can manage to master him. If you don't know what you are doing with Yoshimitsu, then you are doing good. Other than these characters, there were other playable characters in game which you could play, but since their gameplay and the story wasn't clear, I will put them in the second game and talk about them. The final boss of the first Tekken game was no other than Kazuya's father, head of Mishima Zaibatsu, Heihachimishima. His boss is cheap a bit, and his moveset is pretty limited, but deals a lot of damage. His design, at least on the paper, is very good, but in the game, the only thing iconic about him is his hair. He dons a black karate gi, there are bandages around his legs and fists. He doesn't have a special boss fight team or a stage unfortunately, and shares the stage music whenever he is presented with. The presentation of Heihachi, if it wasn't for his iconic hair, would have been forgotten pretty fast. I give this boss an overall score of 6 out of 10 because of the reasons I mentioned. Overall, Tekken games are fun to play. Even though this game is old, it has still invoked emotions in me that many Tekken fans will understand. Did it age well? Absolutely not, but that paved the way for a fighting game that really changed the history. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any idea or comments, be sure to drop them down here in the comment section. And like and subscribe to be notified. Thanks for watching, keep strong, keep powerful, and I will see you all in the next video.